The question here, the Harvard or heaven, kind of play on words, but the question is, what are we preparing our children for? When we are educating our children at home, what's the goal? And for most of us, the goal is a university education of the highest order. That's what when we think about homeschool, when we think about the curriculum that we choose, the classes that our children are taking, that's the overriding goal at the forefront of our minds that drives almost every decision that we make. Here's a word of clarification before we even get started here on this most controversial session. Number one, I neither believe nor teach that college is inherently sinful or completely useless. Again, I'm Dean of Theological Education at African Christian University, all right? So how could that possibly be my position? Secondly, I do not ascribe to educational antinomianism. Do not ascribe to educational antinomianism. What is educational antinomianism? It's the idea that education is an area where God's word has nothing to say. That the Bible is irrelevant when it comes to the education of our children. That there are other authoritative sources out there that should dictate and define how we pursue education, but the Bible is not one of them. And especially, it doesn't override the others. Well, I don't ascribe to that. I don't believe that God's word is silent at all in this area of education. Thirdly, I do not believe that God calls us to prepare our children for college. He calls us to prepare them for heaven. Let me say that again. I do not believe that God calls us to prepare our children for college, but to prepare them for heaven. And college should only fit into our goals and plans with our children to the degree that it is part of the stewardship of their broader life as it relates to pursuing God and His kingdom. Okay? For some of our children, that may include college. For some of them, it won't. The problem is that we treat them all like college is a must for every child. It's just kind of the normal, natural next step, and everybody just ought to do it. And if you don't do it, there's something wrong. That's the problem. And that's not thinking that we get from the scriptures. Nor is it healthy thinking at all. What's wrong with college? Right? What's the big deal anyway? Why would anybody have any issues at all? I don't have many issues, just a few. Number one, most undergraduate degrees aren't worth the paper they're written on. Most undergraduate degrees aren't worth the paper they're written on. At the beginning of the university era, there haven't been universities all that long, but at the beginning of the university era, and for a long time after universities were established, you could only get one of very few degrees. You could get degrees in theology, you get degrees in law and medicine, but you can only get one of very few degrees. Now there are literally hundreds of courses of study on the university level. Secondly, 4 years is too much time to waste. There's a lot of time, especially for what you get. It's way too much time to spend for what you get. Thirdly, $100,000 to $250,000 in tuition, that's too much money for what you get. Way too much money for what you get. And I leave the U.S. numbers in here because there are a lot of people in this part of the world, and what they want to do is they want to go to the U.S. for college. And problem number 4, college is not for everyone. We assume that it is, but college is not for everyone. And it's amazing. There are some of you in this room, I look around the room, I'm looking for certain levels of gray. And there are some of you in the room, just a few, who probably remember a time when high school had a couple of different tracks, right? There was the vocational track for people who were going to learn a skill and go into a vocation. Then there was the university track for people who were likely to go on to college, right? Even if you're not old enough to have gone to that school, you remember that that's how things used to be. For the most part, we don't have that anymore. We assume that everyone is supposed to be on the university track. Just all of a sudden, that's the assumption that we make. And finally, most universities are philosophically antagonistic to Christianity. Okay? Other than these, I don't have a problem with college. Okay? Let's look at the first one. Most undergraduate degrees aren't worth the paper that they're written on. When I talk about worthless degrees, there are a couple of things we have to sort of get in our minds to understand what I mean. First, the $1 million myth. Here's the $1 million myth. This is the way that it's stated. Over an adult's working life, high school graduates can expect on average to earn about $1.2 million. Those with a bachelor's degree, $2.1 million, and people with a master's degree, $2.5 million, okay? Generally speaking. And so the argument is that if you go to college and get a college degree, it's worth about $1 million over your lifetime. Listen to this from Forbes magazine. The $1 million shibboleth is a favorite of college barkers. Like many good cons, this one contains a kernel of truth. But anyone who has gotten a passing grade in statistics knows what's wrong with this line of argument. A correlation between BAs and income is not proof of cause and effect. Again, correlation, cause and effect, two different things. One doesn't necessarily prove the other. It may reflect nothing more than the fact that the economy rewards smart people, and smart people are more likely to go to college. But the idea that you can take those numbers and go, okay, great, get a college degree, you put another $1 million, actually it's $900,000, in your pocket. By the way, that Forbes magazine article was called The Great College Hoax. And this is Forbes magazine, okay? This is Forbes magazine. This is not some fire-breathing, this is Forbes, all right? Financial magazine. The hidden facts. If you think about it, tuition, you take the average, about $188,000. Lost income, loan interest, your total comes down from $900,000 to about $450,000. Okay? And again, this is over a lifetime. This is over your entire life expectancy. There's a lot of ways to make that up over a lifetime. Now, you can invest a very small amount of money early on if all you want to do is make up that $450,000 difference over a lifetime. Okay? It's a small margin. Secondly, there are the mountains of debt. Listen to this, again from Forbes magazine. Higher education can be a financial disaster, especially with the return on degrees down and student loan sharks on the prowl. This is a huge problem. People are going into mountains of debt in order to get degrees that, for the most part, aren't worth the paper they're written on. We're not talking about people who are going into debt for a molecular biology or aeronautical engineering degree. That's not what we're talking about here. Although you can do those a lot less expensively as well. And then there's the idea of what I call non-degrees. But remember, when colleges and universities are started, they are designed, they are there, they exist for the elite. They exist for that small percentage of people who need to have a level of training that allows them to function in very limited areas. Usually, they were theology, law, and medicine, okay? When we started, that's what we were doing. In the United States, something very interesting happened. After the Civil War, there are these land grants that are given. And these land grants given by the federal government to establish colleges and universities, especially in the southern states. after they had been decimated by the war. And these land grants, all of a sudden you have like thousands of acres given to a university. Well, if all you're going to train is doctors and lawyers and theologians, you don't need all that land. So now all of a sudden they start offering more degrees, which actually makes quite a bit of sense if you can do it. If you can get people to pay you for it. Better that we have more students than less, right? What do I mean when I talk about worthless degrees? Here are some degrees. Now, mind you, I'm talking about people who are paying full freight for a 4-year degree in these things. I'm not saying that any of these things are inherently worthless or sinful or evil. I'm saying paying full freight for a 4-year degree for any one of these things is outlandish, okay? A 4-year degree in dance. Is there anything wrong with dance? Dance is wonderful. A 4-year degree where you pay full freight and go into debt? I don't think so. Metalsmithing and jewelry. These are real degrees. By the way, what I did was I went to 3 different universities and just I allowed myself no more than 10 minutes on their website in order to come up with this list, because I could have come up with a whole lot more than these. So just, a variety and sampling of universities. Art history. Art history. Is art history important? Yes. Is art history wonderful? Yes. 4-year full freight degree? Nope. Nope. Creative photography. Creative photography. Is it great? Yep. 4-year full freight degree? No. College debt? No. Interior design. Gay and lesbian studies. Or just women's studies. Or anything with studies on the end of it. Okay? Packing science. No, for real. Packing science. There's a degree in packing science. Drama. Golf and sports turf management. It's a real degree at a number of places. Surf science. They offer that at UCLA. Painting. Now, when I say painting, I do not mean, I mean full price 4-year degree. There are families who are paying for their children to get these degrees. These are worthless. But it's okay, and we do it. Why? Here's why. Because we measure our worth as parents of whether or not our children end up with a degree. And so we'll pay for a worthless degree so that we can say, my kid graduated from college. Especially as homeschoolers, because we have an inferiority complex anyway. And everybody's looking at us and they're judging us, and they're saying, you're gonna mess up your kid, they're not gonna, be properly socialized, they're not gonna be properly educated, and so we wanna be able to waive that degree, right? We go into debt so that we can look at them and say, I do have value, I am a good person. My kid got a degree in surf science, right? But wait. I know somebody who makes good money with one of those degrees. Folks, the worth of a college degree is not determined by whether or not a person can make money with it. There are a lot of people who make money with a lot of degrees. That doesn't determine its worth. By the way, when you talk about these universities, which were established mainly for 3 areas of study, theology, medicine, and law, guess who made the least amount of money among the people who graduated with those 3 degrees? The theologians. Does that mean that it was worth less than the others? You still don't make as much money with a theology degree as you do with some other degrees. But does that mean that they are worth less somehow? Is all we're measuring this idea of how much money people make? Okay? A lot of these degrees, by the way, have nothing to do with whether or not you need a college education. They have to do with the power of certain industries. For example, if I'm in interior design, right? If I'm in interior design in this area, and I have an interior design firm, and anybody can do interior design, I'm probably not going to be able to charge you a premium for my services. But if I can get in collusion with a university, and we can determine that in order to be certified as an interior design expert in this city, you have to have a degree from an institution that has an accredited interior design program. Well, now all of a sudden I do two things. Number one, I create a barrier and a bar for my competition, right? And secondly, I make an excuse for me to be able to charge you a premium. It has nothing to do with whether or not college level knowledge is necessary for the job. It's a racket, okay? This is from Michael Garman, president of the American Library Association, and he's a librarian at Cal State Fresno. Literacy experts and educators say they are stunned by the results of a recent adult literacy assessment, which shows that the reading proficiency of college graduates, we're talking about graduates, we all understand that? We're talking about people who got the paper, right? Reading literacy of college graduates has declined in the past decade with no obvious explanation. It's appalling. It's really astounding. Only 31% of college graduates can read a complex book and extrapolate from it. That's not saying much for the remainder. That means 69% can't do that. 69% of college graduates. By the way, anyone who works in human resources or any entrepreneurs out there who have a business where you've had to hire recent college graduates, you know this. You know that they're idiots. They don't know anything. They have no work ethic. Most of them have never had a job. They know virtually nothing. And you've got to teach them everything, okay? And when you look at the things that employers out there want and are desperate to find, right? Character, competency, a willingness to learn, the ability to pick up tasks, right? And assimilate new information, so on and so on. You look at all of these things that people out there are looking for, none of them are taught at college. None of them. Not one of them. Okay? Well, let's look at this time frame, these 4 years. And it's not any 4 years, it's the 4 years from 18 to 22. These are vital years. We enter careers at this time. We start families at this time. By the way, we used to start families at this time. People are starting families way later than they ever had before. And one of the main reasons is we've bought this lie that everybody has to have a college degree. And by the way, nowadays, quite honestly, we're almost at the point where we say everybody has to have a graduate degree. Right? I've had conversations with people, well, we're going to get married and, and, we've been together for 5 years and we've been together for 5 years. When are you going to get married? Next week? No, we're going to get married in, 2018. What are you talking about? Well, I'm in grad school right now. And let's just stop talking. You're going to make me sad. Let's just not have this conversation anymore. And so we're putting off marriage longer and longer and longer, okay? Fertility rates are plummeting. Why? Because a lot of young women are taking their most fertile years and giving them to academia. Can't say amen, you ought to say ouch. And then later on, we're supposed to just be able to turn it on and everything will be, no. Doesn't necessarily work like that. Okay? And if we're not careful, this is the period when we can limit our options. How do we limit our options? Here's the problem with a lot of the degrees that people are getting today. Because we look at the university as more of a trade school now, people go and get degrees that are highly specialized. They come out of college with these highly specialized degrees, and oftentimes they're highly specialized degrees that everybody's going to get at the same time because the field is hot right now, right? And then you get out with this highly specialized degree and you can't find a job. But you also can't go work in other industries because your highly specialized degree didn't give you what you needed in order to be able to go to these other industries, right? And it's a vicious cycle that goes round and round and round, okay? The money, it's just too expensive. The economy is down, but tuition is up. Families are going into debt to pay for school. Here's what's amazing. And this was amazing in the U.S. A few years ago, if you remember the big gas crisis, and gas prices were going through the roof, and oil companies were very happy then and not very happy now, right? If you remember, several years ago when they introduced the bag fee on the airlines, you all remember this? I remember this. I remember it. We're going to charge you $25 per bag as a fuel surcharge because fuel was so expensive. Guess what? Fuel has gone down. They still charge the bag fee. Right? They're making bigger profits than they ever have because fuel is cheaper than it's ever been, and they still charge the bag fee. But I'm not bitter. So during this time, I remember, the price of gasoline was just climbing and climbing and climbing, and there were people calling their congressmen. There were marches in Washington, D.C., because people are going, these gas prices are just too high. We've got to do something about it. Well, tuition prices have increased more than fuel prices, and nobody's marching over that. Nobody says a word. Please, sir, can I have some more? They can charge us whatever they want to because they know they own us. Your self-worth is tied up in this. I'll charge you whatever I want to, and you'll pay it. And if you can't pay it, you'll do whatever you have to in order to get it. Because this is the altar at which you worship. And it's a non-negotiable. And we know it. And we know it. Luke 14, 28 to 30. For which of you, desiring to build a tower, does not first sit down and count the cost, whether he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, when he has laid a foundation and is not able to finish, all who see it begin to mock him, saying, this man began to build and was not able to finish. It's interesting, not only do you have young people putting off marriage because you got to wait until you finish college, but then you have young people putting off marriage because I've finished college and now I have huge amounts of debt. So we've got to do something about this debt before we can afford to get married. Meet the Joneses. They're members of your local church. They show up one Sunday with a brand new car. It's a $100,000 Mercedes-Benz. They financed 90% of it. What do you say? More important than what do you say, what do you think? What do you think? I mean, come on now, let's be honest. I mean, the Joneses are not rich people, right? They're just kind of your average church members, and they show up next Sunday, they got this $100,000 Mercedes-Benz, They financed 90% of it. They went in $90,000 of debt over this car, and you're going, what is wrong with you? What if instead of they showed up Sunday with a new car, they showed up with a new tuition? It wasn't a $100,000 Mercedes-Benz, but it was a $100,000 state school degree. They didn't finance 90% of it, they financed 100% of it. We wouldn't blink. We wouldn't blink. And the fact of the matter is, 10 years from now, they could probably get more out of the car than out of the degree they paid for. If we're honest, especially depending on what was studied. Young families delaying marriage, starting off in debt. College debt has risen to over $800 billion in the U.S. and now exceeds credit card and auto loan debt combined. The rise of private student lending closely parallels the subprime mortgage boom, which went from 8% of loan origination in 2003 to 20% in 2006. You heard about the big housing crisis, the big housing bubble, right? Before the housing meltdown sent that mortgage sector over the cliff, private student loans resemble subprime mortgages in other ways. As banks and brokers did with subprime home loans, colleges and the lenders in cahoots with them commonly market private student loans alongside lower cost alternatives, blurring the difference. So look at these two, the housing bubble and the college bubble. What happened? Easy access to low interest government loans. That was one of the main precipitating factor in the mortgage meltdown. What do we have in college? College loans are even easier to get. The subprime mortgage, at least you had to fill out an application to show you had a job, right? You had to show that you had a certain amount of income. To get a college loan, not only can you not show that you have a job, but the very nature of the loan requires that you don't have a job. And you don't even have to show that they're loaning you money for a degree that is going to allow you to be able to pay it back. They don't care. They don't care. Housing prices rose as easy government money flooded the market. It's very important to understand that. What happened was, it became easier to get a home loan. So there were more houses being sold. So the price of houses went up. Folks, the same thing is happening with college tuition. It's interesting. The more government money there is, the higher the prices rise. And so we're all excited that the government, is now stepping in and lending people money for college, when the fact of the matter is, that makes the product more expensive. It's completely out of whack now. The cost-benefit analysis doesn't work. A college degree is not worth the cost anymore. And it's only going to get more out of whack. And people are not going to walk away from it, which is why it's going to continue to get crazy. Lacking honest input, 3/4 of high schoolers still seek to go on to college. Many deluded about the financial prospect it holds. Part of the drive is the idea that it pays. We need somebody making more realistic statements about the risks. Again, Forbes magazine. And then the whole idea of the cost-benefit analysis just doesn't work. Next, college is not for everyone. Not everyone has the academic ability to go to college. Now, unfortunately, what we've done is we've lowered the standard so that we can get more people into college. People who have no business in college who are going to college. Listen to this from USA Today. Of the 12 California state colleges, state university colleges, 60% of the students need remediation. A Florida study shows at least 70% of recent high school graduates need remedial courses when they enter community college. In other words, they need to learn material they should have mastered in public high school but did not, costing an extra $59 million per year. Now, we're going to start a university, right? So you all are going to be my board of trustees, okay? So I'm coming before you as my board of trustees, and I'm making a recommendation. Here's my recommendation. We've got X number of students, right? And that's great. Tuition is coming in, we're all making money, and that's good. I would like to bring even more students in to the university. Well, as a responsible board of trustees, you're going to ask me, you say, wait a minute, are there more students who are qualified to come to our university? No, they're not. In fact, these students wouldn't pass our current entrance requirements. Well, my responsible board of trustees would probably object, right? No, we're not going to do that. You have to lower the entire standard of the university. No, wait a minute, time out, okay? These students are going to come in ill-equipped, and we're going to offer them remedial courses to bring them up to speed, which means that instead of graduating in 4 years, it's going to take them 5. And they're going to pay us full tuition for the remedial courses, which means we get to suck another year tuition out of these unqualified students. We'll make millions. And that's exactly what they do. Exactly what they do. And then they come back the next year and it's like, okay, these people are coming, but they're not staying here 5 years. They're flunking out. That's okay. Here's a list of degrees that we can now offer that these students could actually stay in and complete over the course of their 5 years. Do you see how this works, folks? And so the worthless degrees continue to proliferate because it pays. Because we've first sold the idea that everyone has to go to college. Everyone. Secondly, some people are better suited for non-college trades. Some people are better suited for non-college trades. It's interesting, for our 10th anniversary, my wife bought me a lovely watch, a lovely timepiece. It was not this watch. It's a really nice watch. It's one of these automatic watches, and the automatic time movement. It's a beautiful, beautiful watch. And so it's one of the watches that every once in a while you have to take them in, they have to be serviced, And we would take it to this jeweler, and he would service the watch. And he had this deal that said, certified Rolex technician, whatever. The watch is not a Rolex, right? I wish. It was. We got an anniversary coming up, though, so maybe. Okay. So I just asked him about that, and he said, it's real interesting. It's just the tools that I have to work on these watches is worth about $40,000. Man, that must be a tough field to get into. He goes, no, actually right now it's not. There aren't enough watch technicians. Everybody wants to go to college. So Rolex at that time was giving away the tools. If you just go, right, and enter into the trade and be taught an apprentice, they were giving away the tools because they can't find people to do this work. There are a lot of trades out there like that where you just can't find people to do the work because they're all off going into debt for some non-degree because somehow we just don't think that it's honorable to work in the trades anymore. Many non-college trades are in desperate need because of it. I have this picture in my mind of a commercial. It's a commercial for this message. And the commercial for this message would be something like this. There would be this couple at home, and they would be talking about, their kid going to college, and they would obviously be having a disagreement about whether or not the kid needs to go to college. And, the one parent, is saying, well, it's really not necessary to go to college. There are other things that they can do. There are trades, blah, blah, blah. And the other parent is saying, if they don't have a college, they're not going to be able to provide for themselves. They're not going to be able to get a good job. They're not going to be able to da, da, da. But during this commercial, what's going to happen is the one who says that you got to go to college is going to be writing checks. And the carpenter who just did the remodel on their kitchen, who didn't go to college, gets a fat check, right? The guy who put in their swimming pool, who didn't go to college, he gets a fat check. The electrician who comes to do the electrical work, he gets a fat check. All the while, this person who's writing fat checks to people who didn't go to college and make a good, honorable living is saying, you just can't do it. Fact of the matter is, you can. And people do. And there are a lot of honorable trades out there that also happen to be lucrative. And we don't even think about it anymore. Why? Because our self-worth is tied up in that piece of paper. We don't care about the kid. We don't care about their future. We care about our reputation. And we just wouldn't be able to puff our chest out with pride if they did some non-college trade. Well, what about my kid? Analyze gifts, talents, and abilities. Okay? That's Proverbs 22:6. Train up a child in the way he should go. When he's older, will not depart from it. It's interesting. That word, the way he should go, is his bent. According to his bent. Analyze desires and calling. Ask if college is necessary. We're not doing that. We're not asking if it's necessary. We just assume that that's the next step. It's the 13th grade. Right? It's the 13th grade. Seek the Lord. Do those steps. Finally, most universities are philosophically antagonistic to Christianity. This one, it amazes me that we have to even talk about this one in homeschool circles. Because ultimately, what we see, and this was another thing that surprised me, when I entered into the homeschool world and started going to homeschool conferences, and they started speaking at homeschool conferences and meeting people at homeschool conferences, there were a number of things that shocked me. One of the things that shocked me was the people who were like, no, there's no way I'm sending my kid down to, to that high school, and, I'm never put them in that environment, and, they need to learn this, and, Jesus is the center of education, and Christian education, and biblical worldview, and da 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 da. They finish, and then they send the fatted calf off to the state university. Not because that state university happens to be the only place that offers the particular degree that no, you can get that degree anywhere. Anywhere. But they send them off to the godless university instead of finding some place where you can continue to treat education like Christ is Lord of all. That just, it amazed me. And there were no qualms about it. Well, what do you mean? Of course that's what we do. That's not what we do. What do you mean? These principles about education, they carry over beyond 18? Yeah, actually they do. They do. These enemies of God, who are they? Well, professors, right? We looked at some of these passages on yesterday. Psalm 1:1, blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, stand in the way of sinners, sit in the seat of scoffers, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. Does that no longer become true when you reach college age? The fool says in his heart, there is no God. They are corrupt. They do abominable deeds. There is none who does good. That sounds like a university campus to me. Disciple is not above his teacher, but everyone, when he is fully trained, will be like his teacher. Are those the people that we want discipling our children, even when they're adults? Priorities, which are enemies of God. Not just people, but priorities. Again, Romans 12:2, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. Programs. There are programs out there that are absolutely opposed to God, his kingdom, and his truth. Psychology, for example. The very fundamentals of psychology are anti-Christian, right? And the interesting thing is, you have people who recognize this, and so they want to redeem psychology, so they go to the state school where they're going to be taught psychology from an anti-Christian perspective so that they can get the degree and then go practice what they haven't been taught. How's that working for you? And ultimately what they end up being is psychologists who happen to be Christian, who do the same thing that the non-Christian psychologists do. They just pray before and after. Other pupils. Whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm. Listen to this from Richard Baxter. This is the sanctification of your studies, when they are devoted to God, and when he is the end, the object, and the life of them all. So here's the question. What if college is for my kid? What do? Do it as quickly as possible. Make the most of the time, because the days are evil, Paul says in Ephesians, right? Do it as quickly as possible. Don't linger, all right? Do it as inexpensively as possible. Be a good steward. Do it as safely as possible. Okay? Do it as safely as possible. These are the principles that we follow. Okay? No matter who we are, no matter what our child is going to end up studying, these are the principles that we follow. What are some options? Some options, like one option is College Plus. You guys heard of College Plus? Okay? You can use College Plus, get a fully accredited degree, never step on a college campus, between 1.5 and 2.5 years, somewhere around 20,000 US total. Okay? One of our children did this. Online degrees. There are ways that you can study online, and that often saves you a lot of money. It often saves you a lot of time, and it's often a lot safer to do it that way. Combination of distance learning and other types of distance learning, and a combination of distance learning and campus learning. You know what I mean by that? Well, College Plus uses a lot of testing that you can do to test out of certain classes, okay? But let's say that you were going to do a degree in aeronautical engineering, and you could get into, whatever is the best aeronautical engineering school that you can think of. Okay, fine. Go there and do your classes in aeronautical engineering, but don't go there and do psychology. Why would you do that? Do that stuff through distance learning or through CLEP test, Dante's test, whatever, so that when you show up on campus, if you have to go to, such a campus, when you show up toward the end, only taking classes in your major, not those classes with the philosophical underpinnings, right? Again, as quickly as possible, as inexpensively as possible, as safely as possible. There are a lot of ways to get this done, all right? I'm not here to tell you that nobody should do it. Again, that would be ridiculous. I'm dean of the university. I wouldn't tell you that, okay? I'm not telling you that nobody should do it. But I am telling you that if you're going to do it, number one, you need to make sure that you're doing it because you have determined that for this child in particular, this is the best path. It might not be. Don't assume that it is, okay? And if you've made that determination, do it as quickly as you can, as inexpensively as you can, and as safely as you can. And there are a variety of different tools out there that you can use in order to accomplish this. But this whole idea that we just walk through life like lemmings and we educate our children and then we just send them off to, whatever no, we can't do that. We can't do that anymore. Okay? All right. We've got like 5 minutes. Do you have any questions that I can answer quickly? Or whatever they are, I can answer them quickly. Anybody? No questions? None? Yeah, must have, huh? Yes.
There's some online college degrees that you can get that probably aren't too good either. Is that correct?
The question is, aren't there online degrees that you can get that probably aren't too good either? Yeah, there are. You can still go the worthless degree route, but then you do it online, and it's still a worthless degree. And that's why, I said the assessment has to take place first. We don't just do this just for the sake of doing it, we need to make sure that we're being good stewards, and that's just not good stewardship.
With even like what Christian higher institutions becoming more liberalized, what kind of due diligence do you think we need to do as Christians in sending our kids off to quote Christian schools?
Yeah, the question is about Christian schools and then becoming liberalized and secularized, and what kind of due diligence do we need to do before sending our children there? It's a great question, because one of the most dangerous things that you can do is just assume that, hey, this is a Christian school, it's a safe place. Because the fact of the matter is, for example, the overwhelming majority of Christian schools, in their psychology faculty, they have people who are just like what I described. They went to secular institutions and got psychology degrees and were discipled and inundated with a view of psychology that's antithetical to biblical Christianity. But they happen to be members of a church, they happen to know Jesus as Savior and Lord, and so now they go to the Christian school to teach psychology there, but all they know is the version that they've been taught. So you're getting the same thing that you would get over at the state school. These people don't even have a concept of teaching this from a biblical perspective or a biblical worldview. So you would really need to ask questions like that. How do you incorporate your convictions and your theological convictions in your various degree programs, right? I do want to talk to you about your professors in Bible and theology and all that stuff, right? But I really want to talk to you about the guy who teaches biology. That's what I want to know about, okay? Because you can have wonderful faculty over here teaching, New Testament survey and Old Testament survey, and then the guy in the biology class, is from the goo to you by way of the zoo, right? So we have to do our due diligence, and we have to ask those questions. As a dean at a Christian university, who's trying, we're still trying to finish up our faculty. It's very difficult to find Christian faculty in certain disciplines. It's nigh unto impossible to find Christian faculty in certain disciplines that know how to apply their Christianity to their discipline. Okay? Because it's just not being done, So. Okay. All right. Thank you.